there's before things started to become feeling more normal, this normalcy of being quarantined forever and this normalcy of this ongoing stress of this pandemic, it felt there was a great deal of urgency, that it felt like we need to do this fast and really well and get information out there really quickly because we need to fix this problem. And obviously the problem's not fixed and it's sticking around for a really long time. But I don't think that it's changed a whole lot of the way that we've been able to work together. I think what we designed beforehand was, it helped us to shift to this particular context really quickly.
Okay. So can you tell me a little bit more about the COVID-19 study? Like the types of methods that you're using and just a little bit more description about that?
Sure. So we use Twitter as our primary data source. We collect data from the API where we identified about 800 accounts that represent public officials. So we have elected officials from governors and mayors. We have emergency management, the directors of emergency management, or the organizational accounts for every state and the largest 100 cities in the United States. And then we have about, I think, 350 public health accounts that represent national or international, the World Health Organization, the national level of the CDC, all the state public health accounts, and then a whole bunch of local public health accounts. So what we do is we collect every single tweet that they put out, and we've collected them since we were able to go back to January and so get their retroactive tweets, and then we're collecting everything forward, and we also have all of the National Weather Service accounts. And we do primarily a quantitative content analysis methods where we're coding the contents of tweets, and we use those codes to develop models of message retransmission. And we're interested in retransmission because it's one of the only ways that you can measure that people are actively engaging with a tweet other than when they like something. You can comment on something, you can like something, or you can pass it on to somebody. And if you pass it on to somebody else, it signifies to us that there's something in there that you recognize that's of value to others, and so you want to share it. And so we look at how organizations are messaging their contents, and people are paying attention to it and then sharing it with others. And so we want to know, what are people paying attention to, and how can those messages that people are paying attention to, how can we glean something from those in the aggregate that will help organizations in the future to design better messages? Because one of the way that you get people to change their behaviors or to act on information is if they see similar messages over and over again from trusted sources. And so if it's the same message from multiple sources that you trust, you're likely to pay attention to it, and it might change your behaviors. So we want people to see these messages. We want them to be designed the best that they can be designed. And we want the public to see it and say, that's a really important message and it's really good, and I'm going to pass it on to my followers. So that's the goal, is to help organizations to do a better job at communicating using this technology. And in COVID, it's really important because there's so much competition in the information space, and public health agencies and public officials are not marketers, and they're not very good at this in general.
Yeah.
So our goal is, and I know that our past research has helped NOAA to improve their messaging, and so our hope is that this will also help these other organizations to improve their messaging.
Yeah, I know from the research and types of stuff that I do that, like, everyone always goes back to that communication and messaging and, like, getting that information to the people who are important, to all the stakeholders. So
yes,
I agree.
Yeah.
So you stated, one of your goals. Are there any other goals that you have for this study?
Changing the way that messaging is done. We're really interested in developing theory around risk messaging on social media also. So it has an applied angle, it has a theoretical angle. Methodologically, my colleague at Irvine, Carter Butts is his last name, B-U-T-T-S, he's been really interested in doing natural language processing from all of the data that I helped to code, and we haven't focused on that angle yet, and he's working on that currently. So we have the hope that some of this is going to lend itself to improved methods for our activities also. So, the bottom line in any disaster research is that you want your work to help people to survive, to save lives. And so if our activities that we do will help to make it possible to influence people's behaviors so that they are safer. I mean, that's a pretty grandiose outcome, but it's also, the communication is just so important. So, yeah, that would be an awesome outcome.
Yeah, I agree. So you want to expand on, this theoretical aspect. What kind of theory or concepts are you building on?
So we have, we think a lot about the social amplification of risk, which is a framework that's been living for since the 80s. Thinking about how information is amplified in the network. We also think about how information isn't amplified and what reduces amplification, and we can identify those things by our studies. So we think about it from that perspective. My colleague looks at things from a network perspective, not as much as I think we probably could, but most of it is really thinking about message amplification, the social amplification of risk messages. But I think about other kinds of theories that originally informed our work, which was like the work by Maletti and Sorensen from 1990, which is just foundational work in warnings, and thinking about what are the aspects of warning messages that influence message design, message, people being persuaded to take action. And so that model doesn't actually have a name because it was an empirical model. So they created it based upon a bunch of studies they reviewed, and they came up with this thing. Some people call it the warning response model. I don't know what Dennis calls it, actually. I don't even think he calls it a model. But that has really influenced the way that I think about this kind of communication also.
Okay. So what is your expected duration for this project?
It's never going to end. The grant that we got started in May. It's a one-year grant. We fully expect that because it's a rapid grant that we're going to submit another proposal based upon our results and see if we can't get funding to continue and look at this longitudinally, more longitudinally than what we currently are. Because, I mean, the beauty of the kind of data that we're collecting is that it just keeps collecting and it just keeps going. And the more data that you have, you can break it into time periods. You can look at concurrent events that happen on top of the ongoing communication. You can look at it in the aggregate. I mean, there's just the number of questions that can be asked. The only reason that this particular research would end is when our funding ends and we don't have students to help us anymore.
Okay. And so that was through, so you were funded through NSF Rapid Grants?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you're working with Carter Butts and that you have been on your previous research. How long have y'all worked together?
So I met Carter when I started working on the rescue project under Kathleen Tierney. He was a brand new assistant professor at UC Irvine, and he's a sociologist. We started working together then through the rescue project. In 2009, I said to, he likes to tell this story, he probably tells it better than I do. I said to him, Carter, are you paying attention to this stuff on social media? Because I think that it's going to be the next thing. I think that emergency managers are going to start paying attention. You've got the skills, the computing skills and the network analysis skills to help to design a way to collect the data. And I've got the theoretical and the applied knowledge, having been doing this for 2 years. What if we create a proposal and we go after it? So we got our first round of funding from NSF in 2010, our second round of funding from NSF in 2014. We've added multiple NOAA grants as supplements to the project, and now we've got this COVID grant. So it's a long-term collaboration. It's my most successful collaboration. I hope everyone has that kind of collaboration with a partner who complements their expertise. It's been really, really good.
Great. Okay, so the Hazard Center clearly played a role overall in your career, but also in that relationship. Specifically, has Converge played a role in facilitating this research, or any of your research?
Not this particular research project, no. The Converge Center, I am doing work, or I created a working group for Converge that I pitched the idea to Carter, and he said that's not something he was interested in doing, but he thought it was a great idea. His side job is doing mathematical modeling with biologists, and so they've been doing all kinds of other COVID research at Irvine, and he's just, so anyways, Carter he has many hats. So what we ended up doing for the Converge group is we're looking at longitudinal risk communication and thinking about how these organizations, the challenges that they are going to face and that they are facing, and what they need to be thinking about longitudinally. And when my group was first started, I thought we might come up with, these are the kinds of risk messages that you should be thinking about designing for longitudinal risk communication, and that is not at all what we ended up talking about. We ended up talking about the social aspects of risk communication longitudinally, and that was fascinating because we identified that there's two key things that communicators have got to attend to as they're thinking about the population and their receptiveness to these messages. At least two. There's actually, I came up with 5. But the first two was keeping people's attention and renewing their attention over and over again when, it's so hard to keep people's attention. There's an overload of information. They can't find information that's trustworthy. Everything's conflicting. And then the second thing is keeping people motivated to actually take the actions that are recommended, and it's going to become even more important when a vaccine comes out. And now that I read yesterday that Russia's registered the first vaccine. Mm-hmm. I was like, our trust levels related to any of this are going to be a huge issue with motivating people, which in our third thing that we talk about in our working group paper is about all of this disinformation and misinformation and trying to overcome those issues. The fourth thing is leadership and continuing to think about longitudinal leadership and the fifth thing is organizational capacity when organizations are exhausted, and thinking about resiliency among organizations and their personnel. And then those were not the things that I thought that we would be thinking about in our working group at all. So I'm thankful to the Hazard Center for asking people to come together to think around big topics, and I'm really surprised at what we ended up coming up with. It was a really fun experience, and we're still trying to, and we wrote the 2-page paper that was due back in June, and that's up on the website, but now we are still trying to take that 2-pager and turn it into an article, and with my move, and I'm trying. My to-do list is long.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, so 2 of the places that we looked to get our participants was the NSF Rapid Grants page or search, and then also I just went through and watched those Converge virtual forums and just, you know, grabbed people's names and information from there.
Okay.
So.
There were a lot of people participating. There's so much interest.
Yeah, there was. So let's see. So do you anticipate any challenges associated with conducting this study?
The biggest challenge has been the summer and having personnel to work on it.
Okay.
We have the data. We have such an awesome team that's so skilled. And when we can all come together and be focused, we can really get things done. But the summer kind of pulled us in different directions, me to, you know, 1,000 miles from where I was before. And there's just competing demands for our attention, and that's the biggest challenge. It's not about trying to get the data. It's not about trying to do things face-to-face and having to change our methods. It's not about IRBs and approvals, because we don't have IRB protocol for this. It's all publicly available data. Mm-hmm. It's the transition of moving and having personnel. That's my challenge.
So with moving and the personnel issues that or challenges, what about like these changes to lockdown restrictions and government public health guidelines? Has that also in any way impacted that?
My ability to do work?
Yeah, or even, you know, getting your personnel to assist or anything like that.
Well, everything's virtual and everything's remote. And so when I got when I got to Albany, my challenge was that I needed to hire somebody. I didn't know anybody. Mm-hmm. I didn't know any students, so I'm reliant on faculty members. And one faculty member said, "Oh, we just had this really great public health faculty give us a brown bag, and you should talk to her because she might have a grad student." So I was like, "Oh, that's a great trail to go down. I'm going to do that." So she connected me with this really amazing student, and I was hiring her and putting together the paperwork, and then she sends me an email. She says, "Well, by the way, do you know what the benefits are for somebody who's pregnant?" And so she, for her own well-being of, you know, the next 6 months while leading up to the birth of her child, she decided it was better to just stick with the project she was already working on. And so then I was back to the drawing board of trying to find somebody who, so again, it's like, who knows somebody? Because being brand new to a faculty and being unable to go to where all the grad students are hanging out and saying, "Hey, let's do this. Who wants to join me?" It's all word of mouth. And so that has been challenging. I think I've got somebody who's now going to be working with me that I think she's going to be terrific. She's enthusiastic. She's even shifting her dissertation topic, which that is like the best case scenario. But it was not without some stress and some challenges. And, you know, thinking to the student who told me she was pregnant, I wanted to be a supportive faculty member to another young woman who's going through academia and now is going to have her first child, and I wanted to continue to give her the opportunity to be part of this, knowing that she's going to learn how to balance being a parent and an academic in the future. And I was like, how can I try to make her first experience of doing that as seamless as possible? And wanting to be supportive, because that's another role of being a faculty member, is mentoring, you know. And so I feel like she's probably made the best decision for herself, but I also had that stress of wanting to be a really supportive mentor and advisor in this, and feeling a little conflicted, like, maybe she's not going to be able to do the work because she doesn't know what it's like to have an infant. It's not like you just bounce back the next week. It's
Yeah.
so I think that this other person, I think she's going to be great. I don't believe that she's bringing an infant into the situation either, which would be okay. But it's another added challenge, because women are so we are so disproportionately affected by COVID and by being home. I am very fortunate that my partner has carried a huge load of this move and helping us to get set up, and that my son is a teenager and he really doesn't want to hang out with his parents anyways. So that makes things easier. But for other colleagues that I have who have young children in the home and they are trying to balance out working from home while raising a young child while their spouse is employed outside of the home, it is just, you know, if I had that to add on to the things that are challenging about this time in COVID, I honestly don't know how I would manage the number of things I have up in the air. I suspect somebody's talked to you about being a woman raising a mild child while doing COVID research. It is just, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, I haven't got any yet, but I imagine it's coming.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are some other ways that, you know, your day-to-day life has been affected by the pandemic?
I think that before the pandemic, I would do what some people would probably characterize as doom scrolling. You're on Twitter and you're just like scrolling. And with the pandemic and with the mismanagement of the pandemic, I have felt my stress level increase, and yet I can't turn away from it, because being on Twitter and being aware of how horribly this response has gone, I can't turn away from it, and yet it causes stress in a different kind of a way, because it's not just me living in it, it's me also researching it. And so that my stress level has increased. I already had an increased stress level from 2016 on. Watching the impacts of politics on life as we know it. But the pandemic has magnified that even more, and I'm not good at taking breaks. So that, I would say, my stress level has changed. Moving in the middle of a pandemic has definitely changed my day-to-day life. I was very comfortable in Kentucky. I had all of everything was figured out in terms of my living environment, and being in a new place and pandemic, it's just more challenging. Everything's shut down to some level. It's not everything's opened up. I mean, even neighbors we can't socialize with our new neighbors. The little things that you think would be, they're just normal parts of life, and those things are affected too. So, and I can't yet meet my new colleagues in person, and everything is actually going to be done virtually. I mean, I know that I have an office on campus, but I don't know where it is, and I'm not going to go there. So I've set up this room in the back of my house, and it's lovely, and I'm enjoying it. And I just unpacked all of my books yesterday, and it was like saying hello to old friends. And but it's it's not the way that you would normally do things.
So if or how are you coping with this additional stresses?
I have a really supportive partner. My husband he gives me a lot of space, which is really awesome to know that he's just super supportive through all of this. I used to do Pilates, I used to do yoga. No gyms are open in New York. So I walk almost every day. That I have to do that, I have to get exercise. I try to limit the number of hours that I work, and I also try to not work as much on the weekends. We have dinner together every night. It's making those little normal things priorities, and that helps, because it would be very easy to just, as an academic, it would be very easy to just get sucked into my office and just work all day and not take breaks on the weekends, but it's those breaks that help you to recognize some normalcy. So I guess that's it.
Have you picked up any new hobbies? I know a lot of people are picking up new hobbies.
So I was a quilter before, and when the pandemic hit, when on March 13th, when everything started really shutting down, I thought, well, I'm gonna pick up something for quarantine, because this is gonna last like 2 weeks. So I ordered a needlepoint, and I started doing needlepoint, and it was a little thing of, I don't know, maybe 12 inches long. I made a needlepoint keychain, and I finished. I was like, yay, this is awesome! Quarantine must be over, and it's not. So then I got a longer one, so it's a belt. It's like, I don't know, 30 inches long, and I worked on that, and I worked on that, and I didn't do my quilting, and then it was time to start packing the house, and so I didn't do my quilting. I need to get back into my quilting, because it is so good. It's such a nice stress reliever, and it's not just creating something that, writing is nice, but writing is not the same as something that's tactile, that you touch. The other thing that I have loved is being out in the yard, and I love gardening. Something that I did in Kentucky, and something that I'm doing a lot of planning here in New York. I don't know if things are going to grow as well because it's colder here, but I'm planning. I'm really enjoying looking at the different kinds of daylilies that I'm going to plant in my garden. So.
That's nice. I've been gardening too.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a lot of stuff is going to be online there at Albany. So are you teaching in the fall?
I am. Yeah, and that'll be online. It's a graduate student research seminar for first and second year PhD students. It's like professionalization and helping them to get oriented to the program, and choosing people who will be on their committees. So it's a lot of presentations and discussion, and so that's a nice, it's not going to be as heavy a lift as having to teach a course where I had to prep a whole new curriculum. Thank goodness.
That's good. Okay, let's see. So, to date, what have been the consequences, if any, of the Black Lives Matter demonstrations following the killing of George Floyd on you and your research?
I think that I've become more aware of my limited vocal and physical involvement in supporting persons of color who are Black and brown, and awareness is not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be a better ally, but I also feel like that's not good enough. So the consequences are greater recognition, but it hasn't gone much farther than that, and that is shameful. I have not showed up at a march or a rally. I participate by sharing stuff on social media, which, you know, my God, it doesn't do much. In terms of on my research, because I think that's actually what you asked about, that was in my personal life and the guilt and shame. And yeah, I feel stupid even talking about that, because I don't want to be one of those people who's, I recognize that I have a responsibility and I don't want to push it off onto somebody else. And so it's my responsibility to become educated and to do something. In terms of research, one of the things that we're interested in looking at in our data, and honestly we haven't done much with it because we did a lot of work in the first 3 months with the data, and then once we had all of that collected, we started doing analysis and writing. And so that was February, March, April. The end of April was about the same time that stuff started ramping up with Black Lives Matter and marches and protests and demonstrations and everything. And so, but the April, May, June period of data is not anything that we've done anything with yet. And so eventually I believe that we're going to end up working in that data that second quarter of the year, and we're going to end up seeing a lot of content around the protests and distancing and orders and other things that will likely make it into the work that the way that we write about the communication of the pandemic, as well as what's happening on the streets in cities where protests were happening. But we haven't done a lot yet, and that's, you know, we had to stop with the data that we had and start doing analysis, and we chose our stopping point as April, and we started working on it then. February, March, yeah, April. Mm-hmm. So it's coming.
Yeah, I think it's been difficult for a lot of people who, you know, are usually very active and activists and navigating that during a pandemic specifically, you know, trying to make sure that you know, you're not doing more damage. So I wouldn't discount that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, I will be engaged in a different way with my colleagues who are persons of color. It's necessary. And one of the things that's necessary is, as somebody who has had success, I need to help others to have success. And so however I can do that, I want to do that. So.
So is there anything else that you would like to add, maybe that I didn't ask about or that you think is important?
No, I think I've talked about the COVID research and my research and moving and yeah, no. I know this is where you usually get people to start talking about things more openly, but I'm also watching my clock at the same time.
I know.
So, yeah, no, I think I've been pretty honest and open about stuff as we've been talking, so I don't think there's anything else that I need to articulate right now.
Okay.
But I appreciate that you guys are doing this study and asking people about the impact of COVID-19 on people's research and on who they are as they live through it. So I think it's important.
Thanks. Well, I really appreciate you agreeing to participate because I know it just adds, and to the load that you're already carrying. And I will, we'll be following up again within about a year time frame to kind of check in and do another interview if you're available. And would you like to see the transcript? I can put you down, or it's up to you.
How about, can you send it to me before you reach back out so I can refresh my memory?
Okay. All right. I'll mark that down.
That would be kind of fun to be like, wow, what space was I in? It was like a week before classes start. How was I expressing my concerns and frustrations at the time? That would be kind of interesting to know what I was saying.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thanks. Next meeting coming right up.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.